Stillwater this morning, Scramble.
Here for TV, Christy was like, "Is it dark over there?" No, Steve's not in there. Gosh, I hope. About that time, he comes rolling in,
Literally.
dragging his bumper.
I've sent the picture to a friend of mine, and she said the exact same thing you did. He goes, "Oh my God." So they clipped me from behind, Mr. Mayor, and they couldn't have been nicer about it, but they took my bumper off. So.
Oh, that's too bad. Sorry to hear that.
So, but there are worse things.
Absolutely.
And I made it to work on time, didn't I?
You did. You made it in ample time.
I told the cop, and he said, "Downtown, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Let's get this thing going here." So anyway, salute to, and the police were there and nice, and actually the gentleman that hit me couldn't have been nice. There were two of them, and they didn't have to stop. I mean, they could have gone on, and they didn't. They waited for me to come dragging my bumper back to them, and so anyway.
There's not a lot of that. There's not a lot of. I'm thinking at 6:30 in the morning, Stillwater police probably are not seeing a lot of action.
No,
typically,
probably not.
I'm guessing,
but the
Hopefully, that's right.
Hopefully not right now. Yeah.
But the people they clipped me from behind. It was just an accident, and they couldn't have been more honest in waiting, because I would have never known.
Yeah.
Never been able to find them for sure. But anyways, I showed you the picture during that. He goes, "Well, first thing, oh my God." Like, well, thanks. That makes me feel better.
It wasn't a small deal,
but it is a small deal, big picture wise.
Yeah.
With when you watch the news and everything today. And Mr. Mayor, thanks for all you're doing. Will, appreciate it.
Well, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
And let's just dive in. You posted something yesterday about, hey, anybody have any questions? And the terminology is something that we're all kind of learning as we go along, whether it's stay at home, a safe place. And somebody wanted you to explain what Stillwater is doing, really, I think, that maybe the state is not.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question on Twitter was, what's the difference between safer at home, which is sort of the governor's current order, and our shelter-in-place order that we've got in place here in Stillwater, and that you see in different places, right? So there's different places around the country that have different things and calling them different things. I think the biggest difference between our order and the governor's is who it applies to, one. So the governor's statewide order applies only to people 65 and older and people who he considers vulnerable, which are, I guess, people with underlying conditions, or other health issues, whereas a shelter-in-place order is ours applies to everybody. Everybody in Stillwater is covered by the shelter-in-place order that we have, and at places like Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and I know a few other communities around the state have adopted those more stringent orders. So they apply to more people, for one. I think the other is really just the language around, the idea of safer at home means, well, you're not safe somewhere else, you're just safer at home, right? So it's sort of more of a, we'd really like you to stay at home if you can, whereas ours is a more stringent, sort of saying you are supposed to be at home. Unless you have an essential errand to run, you should be at home. And, again, so a little wider application and a more stringent order rather than request, I guess is the best way to put it, right? So, that's what we're trying to do. We're using the state's essential business list in terms of what is actually closed, although we continue to review that pretty regularly to try to figure out if there are other places where people are gathering that they don't need to be, and that's a difficult determination in a lot of ways. But we put in place on Thursday afternoon, sort of a social distancing protocol for businesses that are still open that requires them to take a little bit more deliberate action to make sure, we had ordered them a few weeks back to make sure they were spacing people out in lines and that sort of thing. But this protocol actually goes through, limiting the number of people that come into the store, providing different opportunities and avenues for them to be distant in the store if they're in. And we ask them to fill out a checklist of all the things they're doing and to post that so people can see, what the rules are, what is the store doing to help keep me safe. And so they've been doing that over the weekend, and we've seen Lowe's and Walmart and Sprouts, I think, and a number of other places in town that are limiting the number of people who are now allowed in at one time, so that those essential businesses are also, not just kind of letting people crowd in, but making sure that there's distancing happening there. So, I think we're being as responsible as we can be, but also recognizing that people have to get out and they do have to run those essential errands. We just want them to be safe while they're doing it.
I think I saw with Walmart anyway, it was 5 people per 1,000 feet or something like that.
Something like that,
it
yeah.
was pretty tight.
They put in sort of nationwide. For all their stores, they have put in a limit now, which is great. I mean, I think that's the right thing to do. I think we're seeing a lot of companies recognize that and move that direction, even without people having to tell them.
I'm talking about Walmart. This is way off topic. I watched 60 Minutes last night, and there was a Walmart commercial on there that was great. It showed different people. It was kind of a Zoom type thing where they put the music together, but it was To Lean on Me by Bill Withers, who passed away.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
And they put that together probably, I'm guessing, within the last day or whatever.
Yeah.
And it really was heartfelt. I mean, so whoever was handling their marketing, it was spot on in the fact that, and it was about togetherness, but the Lean on Me song is perfect right now.
Right, yeah.
And with him passing away. So that has nothing to do with anything, but I think it does bring people together.
It does.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does have, I think it sort of shows that it's not just, a government telling people they've got to do something or, a health system or something. I think it shows that everybody is kind of getting on board with, why we're trying to do what we're trying to do and the importance of it and recognizing that it's got to be a community effort. It's got to be something that we all work towards together, and that's that's really important. So I'm glad that they're doing that.
Hey, Will, I was going to ask a question. Do you think, as part of the, and this is just your opinion, but do you think as part of the legislature meeting today, some of the conversation will go a little bit in that direction to try to be a little more restrictive, like most of the other states have gone, or do you think that dialogue is not necessarily part of this?
I think it'll be part of it for sure. I think there will certainly be legislators, and there have been, to this point, that have been asking the governor to be a little bit more stringent. I know Trish Ranson here in Stillwater has posted a few times about asking the governor to sort of step up his safer at home and kind of make it more of a shelter in place. So I expect there will be some legislators talking about that. I don't know that, I don't think the governor is going to the legislature and saying, tell me what you want me to do.
Right.
Right. I think he's still going to make that decision for himself, and he's been pretty adamant about not wanting to really go much more. But I think it does. I think he's been listening to the health professionals that are advising him, and hopefully we'll see that start to make a even more of a difference. But yeah, I mean, I expect the legislature will talk about it. I don't know that. I don't know that they will vote or anything to say, okay, well, we think this needs to happen, and so we're going to vote on it. I think that's really, with this declaration that they're voting on today, because the governor declared a health emergency that does actually require basically ratification by the state legislature, and so I assume, will do that with no problem. But that really just gives the governor, more authority, which is, not a bad thing, honestly. I mean, in these situations, as we've sort of seen, I've kind of learned here in Stillwater, a lot of times you need to be able to move quickly. You don't want to have to go through the Oklahoma legislature for sure to try to get decisions made, because that does not happen quickly or, in an expedited manner. So we'll see. I mean, I think people will continue to call on and do some more, but I'll be surprised if much action comes out of that.
Right.
Although there is more national pressure as the states go from like 10 to 8 or wherever we are now, and the 8 least aggressive statewide in attacking this. And so does national pressure, you think, make any difference?
I think it does, yeah. I mean, one of the question we got on Twitter about what the difference in these terms is also had a follow-up that says, what does Dr. Fauci recommend? Right?
Exactly.
And he's been pretty vocal, in the last few days saying, it seems like shelter in place should be something we're doing nationwide. It doesn't make sense why we're not. and you've seen a couple of other governors kind of push back on that. I know in Iowa they pretty specifically pushed back and said, well, he doesn't know the circumstances here, and I think that's been a stance that we've taken here, right? There's special circumstances for Oklahoma that somehow mean we don't need to do what other people are doing, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the spread of a virus is an equal opportunity
exactly, yeah.
Problem, right? Everybody's got it. What we see in Oklahoma, very clearly is spread in rural areas, where people go, oh, well, we're not New York City, we're not all packed right next to each other, so we don't have to worry about it. But that's not true at all. I mean, there's just as much personal contact. You're not going to have anywhere near the numbers, sure, but you're still going to have people that get sick and require hospitalization and require treatment. And those rural areas in Oklahoma are much worse off when it comes to the availability of that treatment. So, even a much smaller kind of spread in rural Oklahoma is a much bigger problem because they don't necessarily have the treatments available. We don't have the healthcare resources available in Oklahoma to treat all those folks. So I think national pressure. I think you're going to keep seeing that and keep hearing it. I think it will make a difference. But again, it really depends on whether people and the governor's office decide that that those actions are necessary. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that it takes scary numbers to do that. And I think those actions need to be taken before you have scary numbers, so that you don't get to those scary numbers. Right. That's the idea, is to put it in place before you see it all over the state.
And it's kind of like parenting, isn't it? In the fact that I know that what you were on one of your tweets, you were answering questions, and one of the things that, and I think Trish brought this up last week, was one of the things you wrote was, "Why are you being so mean?" And and that is, you're going to have people that don't like your decisions. That's part of leadership, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is, and I think that's. Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the game at this point, right?
Comes with the territory, as they say.
It does. I mean, I think Scott, you guys see it at the hospital and having to make medical decisions about who gets tested or whatever. I know there's a lot of people who've said things like, "Oh, I went to the hospital and they wouldn't even test me," and I kind of respond with, "Well, listen, they've got a limited amount of resources, they've got a limited number of tests, they've got to make hard decisions about where those things get distributed and who gets tested and who doesn't." And it's when you have a situation like this, the people who are in those positions to make the decisions sometimes just have to make tough calls and have to say, this is why I'm doing that, and here's my reasoning. But and I understand you're not going to like it necessarily, but there's really not a lot of choice from a leadership perspective. I mean, it's not like you're just arbitrarily making these decisions.
Exactly.
Based on medical necessity and the advice of professionals and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's not just that Stillwater Medical has a finite number of tests that we're able to use, but that's across the country. And so that in and of itself creates a situation where if you think you've got it, you've got to have all the symptoms, or else you're not going to get the test. You're not going to get tested. And like we were talking about just before you came on, Mayor, I believe the numbers are probably going to go up in this area, maybe not in Payne County necessarily, but it's possible just because now the vet school has begun doing the testing. And with OSU, OU, and the vet school, OSU Health Sciences in Tulsa, and the vet school here in Stillwater, I mean, they have the capability to do a lot of tests. If they're sent here, those numbers are going to reflect some positives. They just will. I mean, we know that there are people that have it that don't show any symptoms. They may be sharing it with other people, but you're right. It's not a pleasing thing if you think you've got it. Unless you have all the symptoms, you're probably not going to get a test. But the Payne County Health Department is doing tests. Call in advance was our message a little bit earlier this morning. So I know that they if you fit the profile, they will give you a test.
Yeah.
Have you heard?
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Either one of you heard anything about scams here in Stillwater? Because I know nationally there are, and one of them was the drive-through that I saw. There was a scam in some city. I don't know where it was. But do we have anything on the radar here?
I don't know, Will. Do you know anything about that? I had heard.
I haven't.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything big.
Yeah, I had heard in the state there were, somebody was trying to peddle a COVID test, like a quick test, but heck, even the COVID test itself apparently has a 37% or 30+%, I'll say, because I've heard 34, I've heard 37, where you might get a false negative.
Okay.
You could be positive and it says you're negative.
Yeah.
So that's probably in a lot of tests. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it's just the COVID. That may be the case in a lot of these different tests. But
yeah. Will, you have a meeting tonight. Gets underway at 5:30. You're Zooming again.
Yep, we'll be on Zoom, and in fact, I'll be at my desk here instead of down at City Hall. I've been at City Hall for the last couple we've done remotely, but we continue to kind of spread that out and make sure we're avoiding as much contact as possible. So I'll be off-site as well today. There will be folks there in the meeting room, the council meeting room. It's still open to the public, but again, only a few people can get in given the spread out and the number of chairs we've taken out just to keep people separated. But you can, watch and listen just the same way you normally would, either on our YouTube channel or the different cable channels, streaming, I think, on Facebook as well. And there's if you go to the agenda at stillwater.org, you can find the request to speak. If you have an issue to speak about on the agenda, you can still sign up to do that. So it's a little different, but at the same time, we're still handling tonight. We've got some regular business, right? This is our normal first Monday of the month city council meeting. So unfortunately, COVID is not the only thing we're dealing with at the city right now. We've still got capital projects we're trying to do and road construction, and we've got some of our dilapidated property stuff that follow up on that's on the agenda tonight. So we're still functioning, and that's one of the other things I wanted to chat with you a little bit about, Steve, before when the next break is. But our city staff has just been unbelievable over the last few weeks in dealing, with all of the virus-related stuff and all of the difficulty of being able to get to work and deal with things, but also keep, absolutely essential services happening in the city of Stillwater. And I think it's really been impressive to see Norman McNichol and his staff and just everybody at the city that's really stepped up to make sure things keep going.
That sounds good. Tonight's meeting is at 5:30. I did want to talk. We're going to do one long break. I decided to kind of stretch that out if that okay. Works for you guys.
Sure.
But first of all, the relationship you have with other mayors in the state, it seems like it's very strong, and the ones who have been the most aggressive are showing the results. Do you constantly talk to Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman, and we're also competing with the census for Norman? How are we doing?
Yeah.
How are we doing with that? I know you wanted to, I think you went on with Robert and talked about that. We haven't talked about that in a little bit. So are we doing our part?
We're losing, Steve. We're losing the Bedlam census battle right now, and that's frustrating because I really, really don't want to have to wear an OU hat at a city council meeting. But no, it's great. So yeah, I've spoken with Bria Clark down in Norman a few times, also with Mayor Bynum and Mayor Holt in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Also, so OML, the municipal league, puts on conference calls every week and has some different email chains that go back and forth. So, mayors in, communities around the state, including an old friend of mine who's the mayor in Poto. We've been talking a little bit as well. He's been pushing, who's one of the kind of first smaller towns that really started getting a little bit more aggressive, even though they, I think, only have one positive still out there, which is great. So yeah, we do talk a lot, kind of compare what people are doing, when it comes to these kinds of resolutions and looking at, what restrictions are people putting in place. We're saying, hey, how are you dealing with, with your stores that are open, and, what kinds of measures are you taking? And that happens statewide and nationwide. In fact, the protocol that we put in place around open stores was actually sent to me by the mayor of West Sacramento, California.
Okay.
Kind of about 55,000 is the suburb of Sacramento, and I've met him a couple times, and we're on a Slack channel for mayors around the country through the U.S. Conference of Mayors, So I had posted a question about, what people were doing, and he said, hey, here's some stuff that we're doing out in this area too. So we kind of modified that up and put it in place here. So there's a lot of information sharing that's going back and forth, a lot of, just encouragement and, hey, we're seeing the same things you're seeing, keep going kind of stuff. So it's great. It's really nice, and it's been good to kind of get in touch with those folks and kind of see where they are. But yeah, in terms of the census, we do have so Mayor Clark in Norman challenged us to a response rate, basically challenge. So whichever city has the higher response rate at the end of April will be the winner. They're currently up. I was just going to pull it up here while we're sitting. They've got a 47% self-response rate right now in Norman. And ours is somewhere around 41, 42.
Oh, wow.
So we're just under 42. So we're down about 5% still in our response battle. Now, I think, we started this down 3, and so they've actually widened the gap a little bit. But, it's tough for us, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to do it in the first place is that, a much bigger percentage of our population is students than in Norman, right? So
True,
they've got
it's a bigger city
outside their students. And for us, that population of students that's not on campus right now and not in Stillwater, those are the ones we really, really, really need to get this message to make sure that even if they're back home in Dallas or Kansas City or wherever they are, that they still need to respond to the census in Stillwater just like they were living here for school, because the pandemic shouldn't affect where they report.
Right.
So they should have said they were residents of Stillwater if they were here and this thing wasn't going on. So they still need to get on and respond that they're residents of Stillwater, and that's the big group that we're trying to reach right now.
Hey, Mayor, a question. So at what point do they go to door knocking?
Well, that's who knows at this point, right? So they should be doing that now. They would have started that right here this first week of April on places that hadn't responded yet. They would already be sending out folks. They've delayed that because of the pandemic, of course, and not wanting to have people, knocking on people's doors at this point. But so it's not clear at what point they're going to start their, door-to-door canvassing because, most years, you can kind of go back and look at some of this stuff and you see, like Stillwater's self-response rate last census was right around 65% or so of people who actually responded at that time would have responded by mail or by phone. And then the other 40%, they've got to go knock on doors and find those folks and ask them to fill a form out. So, the expectation is you're going to have a chunk that's got to get followed up on. But when that happens and at what point they get out and are able to do that, that's really unclear at this point. So honestly, my hope is that doesn't happen until the fall. And there's students back in the fall because, what I'm scared of and what we were scared of before was that they wouldn't make it around until May.
And they'd be gone. That's good, yeah.
And so, if they didn't respond online, then they weren't going to be in their house when somebody showed up in May. And so, we were going to miss them. Well, now that's even worse, right? Because they're not in their houses now and the people won't, if they don't come around in June or July, then we're really going to miss them.
Plus, it's kind of counterintuitive right now to knock on people's doors anyway.
Right.
So. It is, and they shouldn't be, and it's the right thing for them to do.
So I kind of wondered, Will, maybe if we did, I was thinking about the Blues Brothers. And remember they had the car with the big speaker on top.
Yeah.
There's a car with a big speaker on top, and they go down just send the police cars down the streets with their PAs on. If you haven't done your census yet, let's go ahead and do it now. You probably have a moment. Take a moment. Go to your computer.
Rob Hill would do that tomorrow.
He would.
Yeah, we tell him to do that.
Yeah. Emergency management encourages you to complete your census.
Yeah. And if Rob tells you to do it, I'd do it, yeah.
The problem with that is that we need to do that all over these places where the students are right now, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that they're not in Stillwater. And, so there's a lot of folks in town that aren't students that still need to respond too. So It's not just the students.
Now, I think it says on the thing it must fill out before April 1st. Well, it's after April 1st now, so they can still do it online, right?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I think you said, because I saw your tweet, and I don't remember how many minutes, but I'm not the fastest on the computer, and I got it in less than 10 minutes. It probably took me 6, 7, 8 minutes. I don't know. It doesn't take very long. So
yeah, mine did too. Just it's quick, and you don't even have to have. So they sent out a mailer that had like a code on it for your household, for your address, basically, and then you enter that code in when you go to the website.
It's cool when your name pops up there, though. You know, when you type up the thing, because I always miss the name up the code, and you type it up, and there's your address. I guess it's your address to start with,
right?
But you're going, wow, I did it right.
Yeah. But you don't have to have the code. So if you're out of town or if you missed that, you know, you can go. There's a link right under that says I don't have my census ID or whatever it is, and so you can click that and you can enter your address, you know, by hand, and you can do all the same stuff and respond, and then, you know, the census will be able to match that up. So I think what they've done for the last year is they've gone around all these different communities. They've been in Stillwater, walking around and making sure they have a list of all these addresses that they can check against and say, okay, we know there's a house there, and yes, we got a response from that house. And that's why they use those codes to make sure that they're getting full coverage. But if you don't have the code, you can still respond. You can still call. You can call the Census Bureau and respond by phone. It doesn't have to be online. If you did get the thing in the mail, you can respond by mail too. So there's those 3 different ways: online, phone, and mail that you can respond. And you know, either way, you just need to get that in. If for nothing else, to make sure that I don't have to wear an OU hat at this.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Anything we missed today? Because the meeting's tonight at 5:30. You'll talk more about
5:30.
The COVID-19, obviously, and people need to. I have not been in any place except here since Friday morning, so I don't know. I'm interested in seeing how many people are wearing the mask and how many fewer people are out and about. I think it's going to be substantial.
I think so. I think we're continuing to see people kind of get on board and understand why we're doing things. So that's great. The only other we had another question this morning on Twitter. Someone asked about the fire truck over at the senior center, which is a fantastic question because that's something we just put in place last week. So the senior center is closed and has been closed for a few weeks now. But we're kind of creating a second. We're splitting up the main fire station, the one over there on South Main Street, and moving some of the firefighters and some equipment over to the senior center so that we don't have as many folks. That's our headquarters station as well. So, you know, we wanted to kind of split those folks up and not have too big of a group together, just in case, again, if a firefighter or a few firefighters got sick, you know, that could really affect our ability to provide those essential services. And so we're splitting up the Fire Station 1 and moving some of those folks over to sort of temporarily use the the senior center and housing some equipment over there. And so we've got a good, you know, distributed response team. So if anybody does get sick, we don't get, have a bigger problem out of it. So to the question about that's what's going on.
Okay.
Of course, as soon as we get through all this and can move those guys back over to the fire station, the senior center will be back to normal as soon as we can get it there.
Sounds great. Hey, thanks for all you do, and thanks for your time today. And we may talk to you later in the week if we need to. So,
one more quick shout out, Steve?
Absolutely.
So school online starts today. I've got 4 kids at home that are all figuring out how to get on school and do remote schooling. And I just want to say thank you to all of the teachers and the administrators at Stillwater Public Schools who have just been working so hard the last couple of weeks to figure out how to do this, right? I mean, this is entirely unprecedented for schools and teachers to try to figure out how to educate students all around the city, remotely, and have, some folks, they're taking paper to their house, and making sure they have worksheets, and then they've got all this different stuff set up online. And I just, I've seen kind of a little bit behind the scenes. My wife is a speech pathologist with the schools, and so I've seen kind of what she's been doing, but these teachers have just been just amazing getting this thing set up basically from scratch over the last 2 weeks and ready to go. So just a huge thank you to Stillwater Public Schools and all the efforts that they've put in to make sure our kids still get educated even though they can't be in the buildings.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
So we were in agreement there, huh? nice to be on the same page.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
hey, Mayor, if you need anything, just give me a text this week and we'll get you on. So that's
Thank you,
simple.
Steve.
So thank you, and I'll watch you tonight.
Thanks, Scott.
So,
Take care.
All
See
right.
you.
Deal.
there you go. There's Mayor Will Joyce, and again, the council meeting is tonight, 5:30 on Zoom. Any final note here from you? So you don't have to leave, but
Actually, I do.
I figured you probably had meetings to go to.
But thanks for having us in, Steve. And I didn't get to say this while Will was on, but I am the incident command liaison for the city of Stillwater for Stillwater Medical Center with the city of Stillwater and OSU, and so frequently interacting with Norm McNichol daily. We talk multiple times a day. I think I just mentioned Friday. We didn't talk until the end of the day. I called him and I did have a question, but I said I also just felt like I needed to call because we haven't talked. But also Joe Weaver at OSU and Ken Sewell have been in frequent communication with them, working through the process of getting the vet med school up and running as a test site for COVID. So, they did all the heavy lifting. I was just on the communication side from the hospital. But anyway, just great to have those different players on the team, and it's been a pleasure to interact with Norm McNichol. He's obviously a great guy to have as your city
Absolutely.
manager.
So, and we've known him for a long time. So.
Yes.
Since he was the police chief.
Yeah, before.
And now he wanted to. And before. Well, I knew him as the police chief.
Yeah,
I didn't know
guess
him
so.
before
Right,
that.
right, yeah.
So thanks for coming
Hey,
in.
you bet. Thanks so
And
much, Steve.
I'll probably talk to you before the week's over too.
Sounds
So,
good.